Hola, hola, and welcome to the Bilingual Parenting Podcast. You're about to listen to an episode streamed here on YouTube, and this podcast is all about raising bilingual kids, and we just really want to come alongside of you and help you to cultivate and celebrate bilingualism in your home. Now, I'm Kaila Diaz. I'm the host of the podcast. I am super passionate about bilingualism, if you can't tell. I'm raising my own bilingüita, little bilingual, who is 18 months as we speak, and I just really hope that you get something out of this podcast. Now, I will say that we have an entire first season as well as a lot of episodes in our second season. Those are all streaming now on wherever you find podcasts, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. But you might not be a podcast person, which is maybe why you're finding us here on YouTube. So we're starting to upload our episodes here on YouTube. It's going to just be kind of like a little background with, a visual background with the episode as the audio. So it's not going to be anything fancy, no fancy videos. You can tell I don't have, the fancy ring light or anything like that. Not a YouTuber, but I did want to get this information out there on as many platforms as possible. So if you are raising bilingual kids or aspiring to, or maybe you're a teacher that works with bilingual kids, then I'm just really happy that you're here tuning in, and I would love to connect with you afterwards. So you're going to listen to this episode, and then if you want to get in touch afterwards, you can see the information in the description, or you can just listen out. I'm going to say the different ways to get in touch. So we can do that, go from there, and I can't wait to connect. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the episode. You are listening to the Bilingual Parenting Podcast. This is our Season 2 kickoff episode, and we cannot wait to chat with you. Hi, welcome to the Bilingual Parenting Podcast, presented by Bilingüitos and hosted by Kaila Diaz. We exist to encourage and equip families who desire to give the gift of bilingualism to their children. Raising bilingual kids is definitely not always easy, but we believe that it is always, always worth it. Bilingualism is possible for you and your family. You just need the right tools to work with and the right community around you. We are so glad you're here. We hope that you stick around and spend some time with us so that you can be equipped to cultivate and celebrate bilingualism in your home. Did you hear? Bilingüitos is now offering Spanish immersion classes online. That's right, completely virtual, that you can take from wherever in the world you find yourself. We've got classes for kids, as well as classes for adults who are learning Spanish. Our biggest focus is definitely the little ones. We have classes starting at a few months old, like our Mommy and Me classes, and going all the way through elementary, and starting to offer some for the older kids as well, like middle school, and eventually we'll get into some high school ages. Most of our classes are full immersion in Spanish, and if not, we do have Spanish-English bilingual classes as well. It will always say in the description which one you are signing up for, but we would love to have you tune in. Definitely check us out. You can follow us on Instagram at Bilingüitos, or you can go to our website, bilingüitos.com, and check out all the fun things we're offering. It's a mixture of what we like to call our immersion play classes, which are interdisciplinary, play-based learning, songs, games, activities. Yes, all virtual. We have found what works, and we are just loving it. We also have special subject classes, which help kids learn by doing. We have things like cooking, dance, music, and other fun activities that they can do, learn a new skill while learning the language around that skill. We are so excited that this is something we're now offering, and we would love to have you join us. Again, you can check us out on our website, bilingüitos.com, or you can go to our Instagram, where we are very active, which is at Bilingüitos. Hello to all of you out there who are raising bilingüitos. That is little bilinguals, by the way, in Spanish, for those who don't know. I know our listenership represents so many different languages, language combinations, countries, etc., and that has just been made apparent by the Bilingual Parenting Network Facebook group. That has been such a great place to connect with all of you guys and hear about the languages that you guys have chosen to raise your little bilingüitos in. And yeah, so if you're not in the Bilingual Parenting Facebook group, we invite you to join the conversation. So you can go to Facebook and just search the Bilingual Parenting Network and then request to join, answer the questions that it will ask you, which just kind of helps us make it a safe and welcoming space for everybody. We just want to make sure that The people who are joining are people who are actually raising bilingual kids or teachers who are teaching bilingual kids. So yeah, can't wait to see you there. Before we get started, can I ask you a huge favor? If you're a regular listener that tunes in often and you like what you hear, would you pause this episode real quick and go leave us a review? If you're able, just write a little snippet of what you like about this podcast. If you don't have the time to write anything, a simple star rating is also hugely helpful. This is so useful and it really makes a big difference. We appreciate it so much. Okay, without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. Welcome back to the Bilingual Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Kaila Diaz, and we're kicking off a brand new season, so I'm thrilled that you are tuning in. This podcast serves as kind of like a group huddle, advice column, pep talk, all of the above for all things bilingualism, where you can come and learn and get hyped up before heading back into the real world of bilingual parenting. Think of it as your Monday morning coffee, what you need to get through the day. Sometimes raising bilingual kids feels like a long workday. It's not easy. This podcast is meant to support you through this amazing yet challenging endeavor by encouraging you and empowering you so that you can not only get through the challenge, but enjoy it along the way. I know I enjoy a long workday way more when I have my coffee next to me. And the support doesn't stop at the end of each episode. We've also created a dynamic and welcoming community over on Facebook in our private Facebook group called the Bilingual Parenting Network. So please join us over there so we can keep the conversation going further. Now, a little backstory about this podcast, since we are kicking off a new season. If you look at the timestamps on each episode in season 1, I have released episodes very sporadically since I started. I mean, your typical podcaster posts once or twice a week. I was posting once or twice every 3 months. Hey, at least it was consistent, right? Consistently sporadic. This season is different. This season, I have a content calendar. I'm batch recording. I've hired an editor. I'm outsourcing the editing because that was not bringing me joy. And I really, really, really want this now. Like, I am coming at it con ganas. I'm really pursuing it this season. So yeah, the backstory. I launched this podcast on March 18th, 2019. 6 days later, literally not even a week later, I found out I was pregnant with my first child. And I say first, but my only child. As you can imagine, life started happening fast in that regard. And so while I was creating content here and there, overall, the podcast took a backseat. I just want to throw out there that 2019 was one of the very best years of my life. That first pregnancy experience was just so incredible, like literally absolutely blissful. And so I honestly don't regret soaking up every single second of it. In December 2019, my beautiful daughter was born, and again, life happened fast. Oh my gosh. And then a year after launching, almost to the day, mid-March 2020 is when we all went on lockdown here because of COVID. So yeah, that's just kind of the backstory of all of the events that were running parallel to the first season of this podcast. But podcasting is amazing. I really, really love it. And so I have big plans for season 2, and I can't thank you guys enough for being here. All of that being said, season 1 is packed with some really good content, if I do say so myself. So even though I was releasing episodes sporadically, I do stand behind all of the information in season 1. The episodes there come together to give kind of like a very thorough introduction to raising bilingual kids and the different ways to go about bilingual parenting. So think of season 1 as laying the groundwork or the base. And now here in season 2, we are going to dive into more specific topics and questions that commonly arise. Season 1 defined important terms. It looked at the question, why bilingualism? It discussed in depth all of the common family language policies like one parent, one language, minority language at home. And it also went into how to plan for your family's bilingualism before your first baby is even born. So if you haven't given those episodes a listen, I would encourage you to do so. Now, seeing as this is the season kickoff episode, I thought it would probably be helpful to introduce myself again. My name is Kaila Diaz, and I am a linguist specializing in childhood bilingualism and family language planning. During my studies while getting my bachelor's and master's degrees in linguistics, some of the specific topics I looked into deeply were first language and bilingual language acquisition, language education, biliteracy, family language policy, heritage language learners, minority language preservation, and sociolinguistics within the United States. I think linguistics is one of the most relevant and fascinating fields one could go into. Though I suppose many would say the same about the field that they study, but still, anytime I hear a student, high school or college, doesn't matter, express that they're unsure of what to study, I say, guys, this is easy, linguistics. It's just such a diverse field that has so many subfields and a subfield for everyone. Language people, math people, science people, no matter what you're into, what you're gifted at, linguistics has something for you. But I digress. That's just an aside. But if anyone's ever asking, what should I study? Linguistics is the answer. All right, so a little backstory on me. I myself grew up bilingual as a product of immersion thanks to my mom's thoughtful foresight. Now, I'm sure I'll get into the full story in a future episode of my entire bilingualism journey, so I won't go into it right now. I currently live in Virginia with my husband and our daughter, who is 14 months old, and we use the MLA-H approach as our family language plan, so we use exclusively Spanish within our own family. Now, I know full well that the journey of raising bilingual kids is not an easy one, as it requires so much hard work and dedication, but I believe that with the community of other bilingualism enthusiasts around you, the road is a lot more walkable. So I want this to not just be a podcast where you tune in from time to time and then tune out, but rather a community with the sense of we are all in this together. So that's how I want this podcast to feel. Like you and I get each other, as if we're chatting over a cup of coffee or side by side on a park bench, watching as our kids play, discussing the trials and the triumphs of raising bilingual kids. The information I share is as much for the individual as it is for the masses. So picture that as you're listening. We're hanging out and we're chatting. In our first episode of season 1, I talked about exactly who I envision as I plan out these episodes. Who do I imagine as my audience? Who do I imagine you to be as you tune in? Well, let me list out the main profiles of listeners, quote unquote, that I think will be tuning in. First up, the mama. Mama, this podcast is for you. Whether your first child is still in the womb or you have a dozen of them running around. If you're excited about exploring or continuing a second language in your home with your kiddos, then you are in the right place. With that being said, dads, I don't want to leave you out of this. Bilingualism is a family venture and it cannot be one-sided. No matter the language context, both parents speak the minority language, or one does and one doesn't, or even maybe neither of you do. No matter what, you're all in this together and you're going to need to be on the same page to establish a plan and a language map for your family. So I'm glad that you're here and tuning in because this podcast is for you too. The next one is the hopeful, the one who is not yet a parent, the one who is planning far in advance for their future kiddos. This profile of listener wasn't originally in my notes for the first episode, but in hearing from many of you via the Bilingual Parenting Network, I know you're tuning in as well. And I was this way too, long before having my daughter, or even becoming pregnant, or even getting married. I knew that raising my future children to be bilingual was of great importance to me. So kudos to you, hopeful, for establishing this goal so far in advance and preparing and informing yourself now. This podcast is also for you. All right, now we have the educator, and I see you, educator. This podcast is for you too. You have, in your care, a whole bunch of budding bilinguals over whom you have a world of influence. Whether you're a teacher wanting to incorporate a little bit more of a second language in your classroom, or maybe an immersion, bilingual, or dual immersion school teacher looking for practical tips on how to further bring the target language to life, or maybe even a pediatric speech language pathologist who works with a lot of bilingual kids. This podcast is for you. In fact, at some point, I do hope to turn over the mic to a bilingual SLP or two who specialize in working with bilingual individuals so that we can glean from their wisdom and experience in the field. So as much as this podcast is for bilingualism enthusiasts, I also hope to reach the ears of wait for it, the curious or skeptical family member. That's right. You're not so sure that bilingualism is the best thing for the little one in your life. This podcast is still for you. Maybe your son or daughter has just announced to you that they plan to raise your grandchildren bilingually and you're a little bit apprehensive about it. Maybe you've married into a family who speaks another language and you're not at all convinced that there's any need to preserve this less common language. You know what? I am so glad that you're here. Maybe you're the listener who needs this podcast the most. And the fact that you're taking time to lean in and learn more about childhood bilingualism is a very noble step. So I truly hope that you stick around to see what all the chatter about bilingualism is really about. Finally, we have the aspiring bilingualism activist. I see you too. Maybe you're a student of linguistics, language education, or something along those lines. You're passionate about everything you're learning with regard to bilingualism and wanting to do more with it. You're excited to hear about how kids learn so quickly, maybe frustrated because you're not a native speaker of the language that you so wish to promote. Or maybe you are a native speaker of a minority language and want to know how you can support bilingualism even before you have your own kids or students. I actually see this category as the one that I was part of for so long, so it's dear to my heart. You guys, I am speaking to you and speaking from experience. And guess what? You're already a bilingualism activist. Study up as much as you can and go out there and spread the word about how all language is beautiful and valuable. And stick around because we have so much to explore. We've talked about who I am, who you are. Now let me give you just a little taste of the episode topics that I have planned for this season. I mentioned on season 1's season finale that I'm planning to have a few guests this season, and part of my hope is to sit down and chat with some of you, families who are in the trenches, going through the ups and downs of bilingual parenting. Let's get you on an episode, let's hear what's worked for you and learn from your mistakes, and pick up on some of the tips and tricks you've learned along the way. In addition to these interview-style episodes, I have a ton of other episodes lined up. Bilingualism myths, code switching, non-native speakers, language delays, immersion schools, language maps, and so much more are all on the list. Excited to dive into those topics and beyond? I am too. Stick around because we are going deep. The motto we say around here often is cultivating and celebrating bilingualism, and I hope that you will adopt it as your own as well. For yourself, for your family, for your home, for your students, for whomever is in your circle of influence. Cultivate, meaning to first prepare an environment where bilingualism will prosper, and then tend to it, allowing it to grow. And then celebrate, get excited about the growth you see every step of the way. Promote bilingualism with unabashed positivity. Not only will you see leaps and bounds in your own circles of bilingualism, but you will inspire others around you to take a greater language focus. Make it a goal to be an activist for the bilingualism community, both majority and minority languages. All language is beautiful and valuable and worthy of being celebrated. So if you're ready to get started, jump in. Let's cultivate and celebrate bilingualism together. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If this information was helpful to you, share it with a friend who's on a bilingualism journey of their own. We're all in this together. We'd love to hear from you. You can get in touch with us by going to bilingüitos.com/podcast. That's BILINGUITOS.com/podcast. Or you can check us out on Instagram at Bilingüitos, or on Facebook, either on Bilingüitos Spanish Immersion page or by joining our Facebook group called the Bilingual Parenting Network. Go comment on a recent post and let us know what you thought of this episode. We cannot wait to hear from you. Now, go out and cultivate and celebrate bilingualism in your home. Catch you next time. Besitos. Ciao, ciao. Bye.